Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes, just a professor trying to offer context in the war in Ukraine. These are the three, actually four big stories for today. So the first big story is this. I want to talk about the $1 billion aid package. This was the first package immediately after signing that was like everything's getting together and on its way. Like literally it's in flight right now on its way to Ukraine. Okay. Defense Department announced significant new military aid package for Ukraine valued at up to $1 billion. We are grateful to the American government for their unwavering support. The new package is vital in strengthening. Okay, so what is it? What does it include? Things like Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, small arms and additional rounds, 155 millimeter artillery rounds. They need a lot of those. Mortar rounds, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, and all kinds of things. Tow missiles, javelins, anti-armor mines, Claymore anti-personnel munitions, night vision devices, and then spare parts and other things. Okay, so this is on its way. Most important piece of this puzzle is probably the 155 millimeter artillery rounds. Those are going to be significant in holding the Russians back on the lines. Okay, so that's the short term. Then the long term, you see this. They're preparing a $6 billion weapons contract. Let's look at the article in Politico. U.S. preparing to announce $6 billion in weapons contracts for Ukraine. The U.S. is putting the finishing touches on one of its largest Ukraine military aid packages to date, preparing to ink contracts for as much as $6 billion. The package, which could be finalized and announced as soon as Friday, will dip into the $61 billion in Ukraine funding signed into law by President Joe Biden on Wednesday. It would include Patriot air defense munitions, artillery ammunition, drones, counter-drone weapons, and air-to-air missiles to be fitted on fighter planes. So lots of good stuff. Now, there's a problem with that, and I'll show you the problem in just a moment. The equipment, which also includes ammunition for high-mobility artillery rocket systems and National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems, those are NASAMS, likely won't arrive in Ukraine for several years. That's the problem, right? They have to create this stuff and then ship it over. I don't know why there's not a, like, while it's being created, we can ship out another one, but it'll take a while to get there. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is expected to announce the new aid during a virtual meeting on Friday of the 50-plus member nations that make up the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. The U.S. was forced to show up empty-handed for the monthly gatherings for months. A little bit more, the Russians are going to 3 shifts 24/7 in their defense industry. So they're already on a war footing with their industry, and the West is not. The West could easily crush it if the West had the will, but we just don't. The Pentagon's acquisition chief, William LaPlante, said on Wednesday, quote, depending on who you believe, they're at 6 to 7% of their GDP is spent on military. We're at about 3.2%. Okay, so 6 to 7%. This reminds me of what happened in the Reagan years. What crushed the Soviet Union was they just couldn't keep up in spending on military, right? And we're at 3.2%, but not all of that is for Ukraine. So I'm looking at the economy. I think the war will end when either there's a political or economic disturbance that ends the war because of they can't keep up the battlefield stuff in Ukraine. That's my gut telling me that. I can't prove it, but I think that's where it's going to go. But after the $1 billion drawdown package announced on Wednesday, literally right now, there are planes flying probably with the equipment to Ukraine, he added. Just a little bit more. The $1 billion in immediate aid and long-range missiles follows a similar move by the UK, which first sent its long-range Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine in May 2023. Okay, so that's where we are with that story. Big story number 2. I saw this, and I was going to do an entirely separate video just about this because it's so important to understand. This is George F. Will. George Will is a conservative columnist. He has all the conservative bona fides. He did debate prep for Reagan in 1980. Okay, so that's who this guy is. So 112 ignoble infantile Republicans voted to endanger civilization. Now, before you say, hey, you're a rhino, or something like, well, you're sucking up to the left. I'm not. I'm as conservative as I ever was. But these guys that were trying to stop this are not conservative. There's a difference. They're populist. There's something isolationist. There's something very different about them. Okay, a majority of House Republicans voted last Saturday to endanger civilization, hoping to enhance their political security in their mostly safe seats and for the infantile satisfaction of populist naughtiness, insulting a mostly fictitious establishment. Stop. When you hear conservatives or Republicans or somebody in that side talk about the establishment this and the establishment that, that's MAGA speak, okay? Reagan conservatives like me don't talk like that. They voted to assure Vladimir Putin's attempt to erase a European nation. On Saturday, the House voted 311 to 112 for $61 billion for Ukraine, with 112 ignoble House Republicans voting to condemn Ukraine to death, starved of such military basics as artillery shells. President Biden had been blameworthy for what is rightly disparaged as the drip feed of weapons to Ukraine. It is fair to say of him what Theodore Roosevelt said of President William Howard Taft: he means well feebly. Like, it's been slow getting stuff out there. But that's only one side of the equation. You look at the Republicans, and they're worse. Tuesday's Senate ratification of Ukraine aid proves that Dwight Eisenhower's baton of Republican internationalism was passed through Ronald Reagan to Mitch McConnell. They are the three most important Republicans of the past 100 years. Now, look, I'm not an internationalist, but you can't just opt out of the international community. You can't just, like, when the U.S. steps back, it creates a vacuum that bad things will happen if you create that vacuum. But that baton being passed from Reagan to McConnell, I found really interesting. Now, the MAGA crowd will call him McConnell Rhino, and he is a deal maker, I'll give him that. But on this point, he was right in stride with Reagan. The cabal of grotesques might yet predominate. It includes Missouri's Senator Josh Hawley, who thinks that we have given blank checks to Ukraine, actually 5% of defense spending, and less than half of the monetary value of European support. Yet Hawley says we cannot defend both Ukraine and Taiwan, so this would be an excellent time to reduce the U.S. forces in Europe that are deterring Russia from aggressions against NATO allies. Another grotesque, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, an itinerant Neville Chamberlain visiting green rooms, would welcome Ukraine's death on the installment plan. Georgia's Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She wonders whether there's Jewish space lasers that cause forest fires. She expresses her loathing of Ukraine with lunatic accusations that confirm the judgment of Texas Representative Michael McCaul, Republican chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, that Russian propaganda has, quote, infected a good chunk of my party's base. Heroism is not required of Ukraine's NATO and other allies, whose combined GDPs are 20 times that of Russia. The cost of losing by ill-conceived parsimony this proxy war with a barbarian power possessing the world's largest nuclear arsenal would be steep. The Economist columnist Charlemagne says Ukraine's defeat would be a Suez moment for the West, meaning a humbling demonstration of waning power. Estonian intelligence said Russians, in their own thinking, are calculating that military conflict with NATO is possible in the next decade. Joseph Borrell, the European Union's chief diplomat, says a high-intensity conventional war in Europe is no longer a fantasy. Like, it's bad. If you don't address this, it's going to get worse. Johns Hopkins foreign policy analyst Hal Brands, writing for Bloomberg, reminds us Italy's invasion of Abyssinia in 1935 encouraged Hitler to send his military back into the Rhineland in 1936. Listen, if we don't address this here, what's going to happen there and there and there, right? Just as Germany's blitzkrieg through Western Europe in 1940 emboldened Japan to press into Southeast Asia. And we know what happened in December 1941. We can now see that the great unraveling that was World War II perhaps began with Japan's 1931 invasion of Manchuria. Without the benefit of retrospection, we cannot be certain that World War III has not begun. Okay, that's disheartening. But the way that you prevent it is by dealing with the issue now while it's a molehill. And I hate to even call it a molehill with all the destruction in Ukraine, before it becomes a mountain that is World War III. Okay, next article. Russia vetoes UN resolution to prevent nuclear arms race in space. Now, nothing's really happening there, but that they would be willing to veto that is just amazing to my mind. Russia has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling on all nations to prevent a dangerous nuclear arms race in outer space, describing it as a dirty spectacle. The resolution, sponsored by the United States and Japan, would have called on all countries not to develop or deploy nuclear arms or other weapons of mass destruction in space, which are already banned under a 1967 international treaty. Why? Why, if you are following the rules, would you not support a resolution that reaffirms them? What could you possibly be hiding? Said the U.S. ambassador after the vote. Russia's UN ambassador dismissed the resolution as absolutely absurd and politicized and said it didn't go far enough in banning all types of weapons in space. Okay, that's his excuse for voting against it? Okay. Well, that's a real story. Now here's a fake story. This is the fourth big story. It's from RT. Zelensky's top rival has gone missing. Where is General Zaluzhny? Okay. I'm going to read this just because it's so laughably bizarre and bad. Let's see what they have to say. There's only one genuinely puzzling question about, again, this is an RT. This is Russia Today. There is only one genuinely puzzling question left about Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Why is he still in office? By now, at least, everything else about him is obvious. A self-centered actor with a vast yet insecure ego, easily manipulated by flattery. Call him Churchill and see what happens. He has played a charismatic president, first on TV, then in reality. Crudely siding with the West like no Ukrainian president before him, not even Poroshenko. He has sacrificed Ukraine's national interest to Western, specifically U.S. geopolitical strategizing. Well, I mean, or what? Or just be beholden to Russia? Just roll over and take it? So why is the one Ukrainian official most responsible for this now very predictable outcome still in power? The simple answer is because Zelensky has built an authoritarian system. Okay, every time RT puts out one of these articles, it's like a weird reverse projection kind of thing. Whatever they say about their opponent is kind of what they're doing. Okay, the president and the general hate each other's guts. There is really no milder way of putting it, but Zelensky's main motive was a belated attempt to kneecap a very dangerous potential rival. Still, Zaluzhny fired was not the same as Zaluzhny gone, so the plan was to send the 50-year-old off as ambassador to Britain. However, Zaluzhny has not yet left for the UK. In recent days, two things happened. First, there have been rumors which have remained unsubstantiated that in reality he was under some form of house arrest. We may never know why exactly it has taken so long to send off Zaluzhny, and the rest of the article was that kind of speculation and that sort of thing. Okay, so when they say, why has this happened? What could be the cause? Those kind of things. It's not real news. But I saw this on Twitter and I thought, you know, this is actually kind of what Russian media, Russian propaganda is like. It's like they're making stuff up and pretending that this is reality, like these guys in the car that's apparently flipping. Anyway, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.